Okay, I'm Gary Benton, as you can see by the screen here. I'd like to share a little bit about our journey. About a year ago, we gave up our office as an experiment, and we weren't sure how it would go, but as time went by, we fairly quickly got to like working from home, working with a virtual business, and so I'd like to share a few things we've learned along the way. Some of the advantages: you can live anywhere. There are a few constraints. You know, if we were in Thailand or Australia, it would be a little bit hard. Have to be up in the middle of the night for meetings and so forth. But in the U.S., even in Europe, we have a developer that has been doing contract work for us in Spain, and sometimes it works out well because we'll be working on a project and we can pass it off to him. He can keep working on it. If we had someone in Australia, that might be a good thing because then we could work 20 hours a day. But it gives a lot of freedom to. Another thing is no commuting, which, you know, it's nice to be able to check out for lunch and eat within a minute of checking out. So it's really handy. Flexible schedule. We try to have some overlap about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. But otherwise, if we want to start work at 6 or work till midnight or whatever we want to do is usually workable. So, and working while traveling. I want to show you a few shots of about 5 months ago. About a year ago actually. We came back about a year ago. We spent some time in Costa Rica and Panama and Nicaragua, and it was a little challenging getting the hours in, getting the work done, but we had an interesting time. Got to see quite a few places, and finding an internet connection was always a challenge. Some places it was pretty good. Here in the States, it's usually, for me, under 100 milliseconds. It was between 100 and 200 usually, but it worked out okay. It was fast enough most of the time. Sometimes we'd have power outages or internet outages. If I could have gotten a smartphone, that would have been nice. They changed the rules so that it's pretty hard for a expat to get that. But there was Wi-Fi in a lot of places. So most hotels, some parks. We were having our daily meeting one day, and the birds were chirping. I was in a park, and one of the guys says, "Gary, sounds like you're in an aviary," and sort of was. Costa Rica has a lot of birds. So. One time when we were driving along, in the U.S. actually, I was working on editing the configuration file on a server, and it went down because of I missed a period or something, and I was able to get it fixed and get it back up, going 70 miles an hour down the freeway.
I'm concerned about that. Were you in the passenger seat?
Yeah. Good question. And in addition to other places in the world, I even worked in Walla Walla, Washington, in a park. Okay, advantages for the company of working virtually. We don't have to pay rent, so with the savings, we can just about have another developer working for us with the savings on that. Internet's changing the world, and it's kind of puts us on the cutting edge. You know, gives a good PR as a being on the beginning of a trend. Also, we get a lot of practice doing collaboration remotely, screen sharing and video conferencing and things. So we do that among ourselves internally. So when we work with clients, it's easy. We've got a lot of practice at it, so it usually goes smoothly. Some of the challenges. Sometimes it can be hard getting started. Although, again, We have a meeting every morning at 10 o'clock, so that if we haven't gotten started by then, that usually gets us going. And, usually also there are things to do, there are projects to work on, and we work with each other sometimes, so that helps. Not as much face-to-face time. I'll talk a little more about that later. There are a lot of tools that are available. Project coordination. We can't walk into the office and see what the other people are doing. In some ways that's an advantage though, because productivity can be higher because there's not as many distractions. That's one thing we noticed, that 37 Signals has experienced the same thing. They like to have some overlap. They're actually, as you probably know, they're half virtual, half in a physical office. So they're kind of a hybrid company. We use Skype for oh yeah, another challenge. If a client says, I want to meet with your team, we don't have an office, but we've found that doesn't happen very often, and when it does, it's not hard to rent a conference room at a hotel. They're usually well equipped. So, as I mentioned, time zones can be a challenge. Can be an advantage too when we have a big project and we need to keep it going and pass it off to someone else. So some of the keys that we use, I'll just run through them quickly and then I'll go into a little more detail. We have daily meetings. We overlap, as I mentioned. Hiring is easier because we don't have to, if we hire a new developer, they don't have to move. They don't have to uproot their children from school or their wife from her job. So that is an advantage. I'll mention the tools, and positivity is an important thing. Our daily meetings, we call them stand-up meetings. We all stand up, and that helps keep the meeting short. So another thing we do in the stand-up meeting is we set goals. We have a shared Google Doc, and I'll show you a screenshot of that. You've probably worked with that, but we keep track of, we usually have some goals that we're going to try to accomplish that day. And if we accomplish them, we cross them off. Next day, people can see that we've got them done, or the same day. So it helps us be a little more organized and coordinated. Also, in our daily meeting, we can divide up projects, decide who does what part. Also, if someone runs into a snag, you can bring it up to the group, get the group's input, and say, hey, I need help on this, and maybe a couple developers will pair and work for an hour or two together and get it taken care of. Overlap, again, from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, otherwise pretty flexible in our schedule. For distant developers, of course, we don't require that 10 to 4 time period. As long as we have an hour or two, that usually is enough. Again, it's easier to hire, easier to find the best, and that's another thing we kind of picked up from 37 Signals, is that that we're not limited anymore by geography. So, okay, in our stand-up, we've recently been using Google Hangout, Google Plus. One of the that wasn't quite what I wanted yet. There we go. Anyway, in the middle we have our what we call our stand-up doc, where we keep track of our projects and what we've done, what we're planning on doing. On the left is the chat, which has gotten cut off, and we were using Skype, but we discovered we started using the group video, and on a slower connection. Okay, on a slower connection, Skype runs everything through one computer, so if the bandwidth isn't very good on that computer, it kind of gets slowed down. So with Google Hangout, it's a little bit more distributed, so not everything has to go through one computer, so it works better on slower connections. So we found that to be handy. A while back, I was telling someone about how we meet on Google Hangout, and they said, "So you have little pictures of yourselves?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, it must be like the Brady Bunch then, where do you look at each other and wave?" And I was telling that to a group we were working, and they one of the guys immediately cues up the Brady Bunch music from YouTube. And it was kind of humorous. There we go. Anyway, some of the tools we use, as I mentioned, Google Hangout. We use Skype a lot for instant messaging, and throughout the day we have our team has a group on Skype that we use a lot to talk back and forth, and sometimes we actually use voice to talk to each other as we work. Google Docs has been invaluable because, as you probably know, everybody can edit the same document, and you can see the changes that people are making as they're making them. So sometimes on our Standup doc, we'll have 2 or 3 people typing, and it works out really well to be able to share the documents. For estimating, we use a Google spreadsheet that we've come up with, and we estimate how much time we believe one task will take, and then on either side we estimate the probability that it'll take more or less time. So we put a percentage of, we have 50% confidence that it will take it might take more time, or we have a certain amount of confidence that it might take less time, and that's put into a formula, and that's one of the ways that we come up with our estimates for jobs. And we're working on a tool that is a virtual office platform. We'll be launching it soon. I can't tell you very much about that, but if you're interested, drop me an email and I'll put you on a list, and we'll keep you posted as we get ready to launch that. One of the last items, in a virtual environment, it's not quite as easy to just say, "Hey George, that was a good job you did on this," or whatever. So we find that in order to have a positive environment, we have to be a little bit more deliberate and sharing accolades or pats on the back, that sort of thing. So also we take turns at the beginning of our stand-up meeting. I usually share a positive thought or motivational thought or inspirational thought, and but sometimes some of the other members of the team will take their turn, and that's been a good thing. Just 1 to 5 minutes of sharing something that has been helpful and motivational. And again, positive feedback is good, and that's about it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Sure.
Derek, where did you decide to locate the company?
The company began in Walla Walla, Washington. It's kind of diagonal from Seattle, about 4.5 hours. And most of the team is still there. One of our new developers was in Seattle when we hired him. Now he's in Idaho. One of the reasons one of the big draws for him was that we are a virtual company, and he could work from wherever he wanted to. So this summer he's been at a summer camp, coding during the day and playing drums in the evening. And so he's a very good find. It was one example of how if he had been required to come to Wall Wall and work in the office, I don't know if he would have taken the job, but he took his university degree in web design, graphic design, but in his work experience he got into Ruby and loved it and became quite good at it. And he's had several years of experience by now, and so he's able to do both graphic design and Ruby, which is a big asset to the team. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your time.